Perfect.
Great.
So thanks very much, everyone, for joining. This is part of our HOT community webinar series, where we're basically trying to share some of the really good activities and interesting projects that different members of the community are up to, because obviously within the community we have a huge number of people in a lot of different places doing very interesting things, and we just wanted to make a platform to share some of those ideas. So if you have any suggestions for future topics as well that you'd like to hear about in webinars, then please let me know. But this month we have Nate, who's going to be talking about OpenAerialMap, which is a sort of a reasonably new project of HOT, which is kind of like an open source Google Earth, the way that OpenStreetMap is an open source map. And Nate's been managing the project and is going to talk us through it. So I'll hand over to you now.
Awesome. Thanks, Rebecca. And someone else on the OAM team, Tom Buckley, he'll be joining us as well. Tom, let me know if you're online. And while we're doing this, so can everyone see? I'm doing full screen, like presentation mode. Can you see the slides?
Yeah, it's working for me.
Yeah, I can see them.
It's working for me. Hi everyone, this is David from Liberia.
Hi David, welcome.
Thank you.
Cool, so just to give kind of a quick outline of what we have planned is essentially I'm going to kind of walk through a couple of slides and give a quick intro to even why OpenAerialMap exists, and then do some like kind of live demoing. I think one of the goals that I want to make sure is not just talking about OEM, but kind of showing, giving a little bit of here's how to filter and see through it. Do you mind if everyone just mutes? I'm getting a little bit of feedback, background noise.
There's some very loud background from one person.
Rebecca, is it possible just to mute everyone?
I've just done that, and yeah, I think it's better now.
Great, thanks. So I'm gonna walk through and then we'll get into some more practical stuff, just kind of get a sense of the look and feel. You know, both how to, if you're coming here, you've either done you use UAVs or you use a lot of satellite imagery, how to like upload and share. But then also, let's say you're not a pilot or you're not an analyst, but you just want to see and view and be able to access some of the imagery. And so I'm going to kind of cover both use cases. So, just by way of a quick introduction, my name is Nate Smith. I'm a technical project manager for HOT, and one of the main projects that I help lead out is the OpenAerialMap project. Myself and then a number of other people work on it, from everyone from Cristiano to Blake to Rebecca, and then we have a developer on our team who's based in Indonesia, a guy named Tom Buckley Houston, and he'll give a quick introduction a little bit later. So, you know, if you've never, I'm assuming that most everyone has heard of HOT, and you're coming to these community webinars because you're familiar with them. If you're not, you know, HOT is a nonprofit. We make maps for humanitarian and public health organizations, and we're all under the use of OpenStreetMap, and essentially helping contribute to the editing and the use of OpenStreetMap for global development organizations. And so OpenStreetMap is a big part of what we do, and what I'm going to be talking about, like OpenAerialMap, is a bit of like kind of a sister project that feeds into all of this work and feeds into the work that HOT does, both from a remote mapping standpoint and a field-based mapping standpoint. So one of the things is that imagery is super critical for creating maps and baseline data. And so we know this when we're doing remote mapping, we use some type of aerial or satellite imagery, and we can see building footprints, roads, observable infrastructure, and then we digitize it, right? We map it, we trace it, and extract some of the data from the map. So in places like West Africa, right, we all know this, we can quickly map an area remotely using that satellite imagery, good satellite imagery. So, but the challenge is, of course, if you've ever done a mapping task, you may have run into this problem before, or these next few problems that I'm going to talk about is that essentially you run into low resolution imagery. I can't see building footprints. I can't see the differences between two houses. I can't see what type of road it looks like, and or there's clouds in the way, so I can't see, because I can't see through the clouds. Then lastly, a big challenge is also out of date imagery. So we see like in areas where a city has grown in the last couple of years, and so if you're using imagery that's dated in 2012 and it's 2017, you're missing a big part of the community, and you don't know, and so you need up-to-date imagery to be able to do accurate and quality mapping. And then, so on top of this, just as you know, there's been an explosion of different satellite imagery companies, whether it's big sets or very small sets, and then as well as it's more feasible to buy a drone and start kind of putting it up in the air and collecting imagery. And so a big challenge is starting to deal with all this imagery. And so it's hard to store, it's hard to publish, and it's hard to find. And on top of it, I'm adding it's hard to use many times. It's hard to, big bulky data can be tough to use. So this is where the work of Project OpenAerialMap comes into play, is really trying to solve these problems of storing, publishing, finding, and using satellite and aerial imagery. So 2 years ago, we launched really to solve these problems and really to think about distributing with good licensing and metadata specs, so having kind of good infrastructure, but then with a focus on mapping, with a mapping workflow to humanitarians, and that was kind of the frame of mind of what we were launching with 2 years ago. And so like the quick pitch is OpenAerialMap is a distributed commons for sharing aerial imagery. It's a set of tools for searching and using satellite and drone imagery, and it's a browser, it's an API, it's some functions to be able to contribute and also get imagery. So when you go on OpenAerialMap.org, if you haven't gone there yet, you'll see a big map, and so any place in the world you kind of see highlighted in blue, and you can zoom in and do a place like the Philippines and see what imagery is available. You can click on an individual image and dive in and be able to access the information about it, download it, but then also be able to then pull it, preview it, or pull it directly into OpenStreetMap editor like ID. And so this is like the primary workflow for getting imagery out of the field into the cloud and into the hands of people doing mapping. And we thought we've used this in a number of response situations, and I'll talk a little bit about some more of coastal mapping, climate change, disaster preparedness work. But in like a recent example last fall was Hurricane Matthew, where a whole bunch of satellite imagery was released, and we made it available into OpenAerialMap, and those images were then directly integrated into things like the tasking manager to serve as a base layer with updated imagery, and so then you're able to see, like, in a community like this where you have good imagery, you can actually map it. Whereas previously in Haiti, the imagery looked like this in some areas, so it's hard to do baseline mapping with that type of imagery. And so now with the updated imagery, we can then digitize that whole community and be able to put that community on the map. Then, but beyond satellite, UAV imagery and UAV pilots have been publishing and making the data available through OpenAerialMap. A couple of examples have been in just recently in Peru, a number of or several private UAV companies joined in with the response for flooding and mapped several areas of outside of Lima, and those images then were directly integrated into tasks that the local community was running, that the Global Hawk community participated in, and served that response. Just another example has been Ecuador, where there was a volunteer UAV community that came together in the aftermath of the earthquake, and mapped a number of communities that had been severely affected, and provided a good complementary to the host of satellite imagery that was released. And so we had both high-res satellite imagery and then this more ultra-high-res drone imagery. And so the workflow there again is being able to preview, check it out on the map, and then be able to pull it directly into OpenStreetMap. Another example of some drone imagery has been World Bank has been running a number of climate change and kind of coastal inundation mapping projects in Sao Tome, and so yeah, they've mapped a good chunk of one of the main islands there, and put it on there, and OEM has served as a resource for hosting and then making that imagery available, not just for the project, but for the life beyond the project. So now these images are available for the community to continue to use and be able to access. And then the same thing in Malawi, where people are looking at flooding zones and mapping, not just from a 2D perspective, but doing 3D mapping and estimating what are the potential risk for flooding in certain areas, and then they've made that they've distributed that through OpenAerialMap, and people have been able to pull that. So the other you're not just pulling into ID, but pulling it into the JASA manager as well. And then, like super recent example has been some of the work that American Red Cross has been doing in the Philippines, collecting imagery and some for community mapping projects, so people are not only like mapping for disaster response, but doing some planning around growth of ecotourism, or putting communities that haven't been on the map before, and being able to update them and work with those communities to have a better map of their area. And so like when you go to OpenAerialMap.org, you kind of see this freshness. So we're always changing this ever-growing repository of data that's being, and you'll see a lot of drone imagery that's updated. A number of people are updating that on a weekly basis. So what I want to do is kind of walk through let's see, so it's 315, walk through the browser, the API, and uploading, just to give everyone a sense to kind of understand the wide range of how you can join into the community, be a part of it, use these tools, and hopefully, and that will be helpful. And then the last part, what I'll do is I'll talk a little bit about what's next, where we're going, and use that as a way to end, and we can roll into some questions. So I want to go to the browser. So I'm gonna share my screen real quick. Great. So, so everyone can see. So when you go to OpenAerialMap.org, you get a sense of what's the latest. You can then hit start exploring, and you'd be taken directly to a full screen map view. To kind of orient you, you have some functions over here on the right for uploading, getting information, and then on your left you have more map-based functions. So being able to filter just for high resolution, or maybe I want to see all imagery, and you'll see the map change. So we have a lot of lower res imagery as well as high res. So if I want to see all high res, I can click the filter, and I want to see within the last month. And so I start to get a sense, okay, here's some more recent imagery that's been collected that's super high res. I can click this one here. It takes me to the latest imagery. It's the last image that has been uploaded. So I'm gonna actually click that. And there's been some recent imagery collected in Guatemala. So let me just close it. So so when you click on an image, you'll see this sidebar come up. I'm just going to close this out, and you can see that this is what it looks like on the map. So when I click it, it opens up a little sidebar. It gives me a menu. This is the images that are available. I can click this little bullseye and zoom directly to the image. I have a thumbnail preview. Then I can also go here and click the TMS. And what it does, it loads a tile map service, and I can zoom in and be able to kind of interact with the map. Hopefully my video is not too far behind. Then on here on the right, you have all your information about the date and who provided it, and a bit of information about the sensor. But then you have some action buttons right here below the preview, and so you can download the image directly. So download the full raw imagery, or you can do something with it. So you can open it up in an ID editor, you can open it up in JOSM, or you can grab the TMS URL. So if I open this up in an ID editor, what it's going to do is it's going to open up a new window directly into OpenStreetMap. I'm already logged in, and it loads ID with data loaded. And someone's already mapped this area. There's a little bit of an offset, but yeah. So that's you can get started mapping. And go back here. So the other thing I want to point out is this TMS URL. So if you're familiar with ID, right? It actually what's happening in the background is that it's adding a custom imagery layer for you to trace upon, if you're familiar with that. That custom imagery layer is just this TMS URL, and so what I can do, if you ever want to not pull it into ID, I can copy this, and I can go to something like geojson.io. And you can add it as a layer. So I'm going to zoom into Guatemala. And what I can do is add it as a map layer. Type OEM. And what it's going to do is it's going to load it into the browser. And it should load. Yeah, there it is. So this is another way to get imagery and start using it either within OpenStreetMap or outside of OpenStreetMap. The last way to use it is this WMTS URL. So this type of endpoint you can pull if you're a Esri ArcGIS user, you can pull that in and use that as a base layer. If you're a QGIS user, you can use that as well. And so it gives you an option to pull it into your own any type of GIS software. So and then, just to give you another sense, you can report any problems and any issues that you see, and then the last thing I'll point out over here is you can search any place. So let's say I want to see Dar es Salaam. I can, oops, there we go. Go over here. I'm just going to exit out this. And what it'll do, actually, oops, I have a filter on. So I can quickly use the search to jump over to an area that I want to see on the map, and then be able to click and interact with the map. And I can see the imagery that's all over Dar es Salaam. So that's pretty much the basics of the browser. One other, I guess, one feature here is you can change the base map. So I can look at a styled mapbox layer, or I can look at a standard OpenStreetMap layer, or I can turn on a mapbox satellite layer and be able to do a little bit of comparison with the imagery that exists versus a more standard satellite layer. So let's, what I'm gonna switch to, that's pretty much a quick overview of the browser, of kind of how to use, get your bearings, get a sense on what you can do, and be able to interact with it. So the next thing I want to talk about is about just like touch on the API, and just to give people a sense that there is an API that we're thinking about, like enable this type of access, so you're not just accessing it through a browser-based interface, but having API access. And I wanted to bring Tom onto the line if he's around. Tom, are you around?
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah, you can.
Go for it.
So the API is very much an open-ended access to everything that OAM offers. It powers the browser, but it also gives the possibility of doing things that we couldn't imagine or that we couldn't predict. So it allows us to do the same as the browser, in as much as being able to upload imagery, search for imagery, find the latest in imagery, filter imagery. But it allows us to do that in an automated way. So it allows developers to experiment with new ways of using the data. And one example of that is something that I've thought of. This isn't something that we have planned, but it's just an example of what could be done with the API, is to automate the collection of drone imagery. So, for example, we've recently been looking at integrating with a company called Drone Deploy, which is software for drones. So I could imagine, I'm not aware of anybody that's built this yet, but with the API and with something like Drone Deploy software, you could have a situation in which Drone Deploy, your drone, telephones, makes a query to the OAM API asking, what are the areas near me that currently do not have imagery of a certain resolution. And then the drone can automatically, without any user intervention, fly, photograph that imagery, the required imagery, and then automatically upload that to the OAM browser. Which is something, I mean, this is something that's kind of similar, reminiscent of what Google Street View did. Street View was essentially an automated project. It didn't need the drivers to be expert mappers. Google just had a powerful API and told the drivers where to drive. And then suddenly you have Google Street View. So this is just one idea. It may never happen, but this is what the power of an API allows developers to imagine. It's a powerful feature that does the basics of searching and uploading, but allows for the potential for things that we could never imagine. Yeah,
exactly. And I think if anyone has questions about it, both Tom and I are available to talk more about it. We can talk offline about it, and we can, if you have ideas and just general interest about it, we're more than willing to talk, to scheme on ideas. So thanks, Tom. I appreciate that. So last thing I want to touch on is the uploader, which is part of the API, but I kind of want to just walk through the process, essentially both on getting API an upload access, but then just familiarizing people around this upload process. If there's anyone who's out there that's already collecting a lot of imagery, want to be collecting a lot of imagery, or is just curious. So the browser is much more on the kind of using side of imagery. The uploader is at the very beginning, is really contributing and sharing and publishing. So what happens when I upload? So one kind of the workflow of what happens is raw imagery. So your images that you've collected on the drone are generated into this single orthomosaic image. That raw image is uploaded to a cloud server. Hot is running that cloud server. Someone else could run one. These are open source tools. It's compressed and optimized, and then saved onto cloud storage. During that process, we then are indexing into the API, and it's made available through the OAM browser. And also we're have API access through TMS and WMTS endpoints. So you have these kind of two endpoints of being able to access and view, but they're also kind of the same because we use them. So that's just the general process of what happens behind the scenes. But so what do I need to upload? Well, first off, you need to have request a token upload. We have a token system at the moment. I'll talk a little bit about the future, like what we're thinking around making that process easier. You need to have a geo-referenced, true color, RGB color, GeoTIFF or JP2 file. Those are two of raster image files. We're working on some more formats to be able to offer a little bit of flexibility depending on how people work with imagery. And then you need to have data about the sensor. So what kind of camera did you use, or what kind of when was the imagery collected? So you need to have some information about what was collected. Then if you go to upload.openaerialmap.org, you'll see a form like this. It's a basic, simple form. If you haven't requested a token, you can click on it and submit an email or GitHub request to be able to get a token. someone will reply within an hour or so. And then you have a token to be able to enter in your information, entering the data about the collection, about that image that you've collected, and then you're able to then submit that, either upload directly through the browser, or let's say you already have it on Dropbox or Google Drive because you've used those services for saving and backing up your data. And so we have all those type of integrations to make it easy for you to contribute your data. Then once you hit submit, then you're going to see a form that looks like this, just kind of like a general status form of like how long is what's the status of your imagery that you've submitted, and it goes through. You'll see a kind of a green section at the bottom saying finished, and you'll be able to view your image and be able to access it through the OAM browser. So where are we going? The team has been working on, and the community of people have been working on a number of kind of three main threads, really. One is more features and improving integrations and other aspects of OEM and this infrastructure. We're then also working on equipping people with guidelines and documentation and how to use drones for mapping purposes. Drones have many other applications than just mapping. We've been focused on mapping, and so we want to encourage high quality data collection, responsible data collection, and so we're working on drafting some technical guidelines. There's a bunch of other regulation and code of conduct out there, and great work that people have done, and so we want to contribute to that body of knowledge and around drones for mapping. And then the last thing we want to do is building a community of contributors, not just a community of contributors in a sense of just people uploading imagery. That's a number one priority, but then also people who want to make some prototypes or contribute to OAM code. We want to grow a nice diverse community of people using, contributing, and then continue to experiment around imagery. And so that's kind of really looking to build that community. So on the improving integration side of things, we're looking at, we've recently just uploaded the kind of local file. So now you can see this GIF, you can contribute an image and be able to then upload it directly. We're working on other integrations with open source projects like OpenDroneMap, then other non-open source projects like Drone Deploy, Agisoft, Pix4D, which Drone Deploy was what Tom mentioned, and being able to say if you use those services or use those software, then and you want to get your imagery out and into OEM, then there's an integration and a connection point for to make it easy to contribute. Then the big things like we're working on this summer are things like user accounts for saving searches or favorites, or easier uploading, improved data management. So if you do update or upload imagery, you can update your metadata, manage a license, or be able to control your data a bit better. And then provider pages, so essentially filtered views of OEM based on an individual provider, contact information, things that enable a much richer experience of what's the imagery that's available. And then I mentioned this technical guidelines. So we're working currently and be wrapping up this summer a technical guideline document about using small UAVs, and which goes into depth around not just choosing the right UAV, but defining AOIs, planning a mission, processing the data. What do you do when you're out in the field? And so this will be a document that's will be made available. And then lastly, we are an open and open source community, and so we're tracking all of this stuff on GitHub and through the hot Slack community, and so anyone who wants to just look from the outside in, you can do that here. If you want to jump in and ask questions, contribute to the development, you can do that here as well. So how do I get involved? You can join the mailing list, OpenAerialMap at hotosm.org. You can join our Slack community. We have a channel that's dedicated to OAM. You can join UAviators or other forums or different types of rosters that are out there to be able to get more information. If you're a pilot, you will be able to jump in and register yourself and make yourself available for a humanitarian mission. And then lastly, there's a number of resources, whether it's talking about UAV imagery, this UAV development.github.io report, regulations around, what are the legal regulations for where I can fly, where I should not fly, and then keep a lookout for the mapping guidelines on OAM. This is UAviators, and so yeah, thank you. We're at about 40 minutes, so I think this is a good amount of time to leave for questions or comments from anyone.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Nate. That was really nice to see a walkthrough of how everything worked out. We had a few questions come through in the chat window. So if people want to either just pop questions in there or come off mute and ask. There was one which came through just, which I wasn't quite sure if you covered, saying, can we add TMS for JOSM in image preferences?
Yes. So when you're in JOSM, so there's two ways. Let's see if you can still see my screen. So when you go here and you're on an image, let me just zoom in really quick because it's going to be too much data. When you go here and then a second, go into Open in JOSM. So this is going to load directly into JOSM. Oops, too large. 1 second. Let's see what I'm looking at. What it's going to do is load this data. So in your preferences, you can what you would do is grab the TMS URL. Now, I think you can add WMTS, but essentially grab the TMS URL and you would then be able to go into your image preferences, which is here. And then you can be able to add either a WMTS or a TMS. And so you can, so that would be the way where you add it into your preferences. Hopefully that is clear.
Mm-hmm. Cool. Perfect. And then we had another question from Alessandro who said, is there like a flag that you can do to select UAV imagery? Or do you just choose the resolution?
Great question. Yes. So right now we have pretty limited filtering. And so there's not a UAV flag, but that's it's one of the parts of improvements that we're going to be doing this summer is raising the capabilities of how you can filter. So not just like by week, month, year, but maybe having a date slider, getting a little more fine grain in your date and resolution. But then also the type and provider, those seem to be coming up as we get more providers, more types, that would be helpful to be able for people to hone in on what type of imagery that you're looking for. So it's not there yet, but it will be.
Perfect. There's a few more questions coming in, and everyone else just feel free to type them in. That's easier.
From Joe. Hey, Joe. I also got your private message. Let's definitely follow up on the API. Are there limits on upload side? No, they're not. We have processed some very large imageries, up to 15 and 20 gigabytes. And similarly, do you accept compressed images? Yes, we essentially do. I think the process that we would do would just not recompress it, so then we would be able to accept already compressed images. But essentially, the output is a compressed. We're kind of following if you're familiar with this newer term called cloud optimized GeoTIFF, and so we follow most of those principles in producing a cloud optimized GeoTIFF.
Perfect. And then there's another question from Bjorn on how do you manage exact geopositioning? So
we don't manage that. That is up to the user. If we're talking about drone imagery or even satellite imagery, it's up to their accuracy and the way that they georeference the image. And so there's some best practices out there. That'll be part of the mapping guidelines, is equipping people to think about getting good georeferencing, so that we have accurate data and that offset is not significant. But yeah, I think we have talked about a number. I see your second question around checking against existing features. We have talked about, would it be interesting to upload kind of GCPs and make those available, or upload offsets and tap into maybe the OpenStreetMap offset database and make that available for people to use. I think there's some interesting ideas out there that we haven't really addressed yet.
Perfect. I have a question actually, which is around, in terms of the steps to scale this, one of the biggest questions we get, obviously, as you know, working in imagery from communities around the world, is can they have updated imagery from their projects? And obviously, if everybody was uploading notes into OpenAerialMap, that would be something that would be really easy for us to provide. But in terms of the scaling, do you see it more as something that you want it like drone imagery providers to upload to, or satellite imagery providers, or kind of what's the goal?
So that's a great question. The way that we're seeing more on thinking about the contribution side of things is much more geared towards manned and unmanned aircraft, UAV flying, and that type of imagery, where being able to upload and manage that data, at the same time have more systematic, kind of computer-to-computer connections with satellite companies. They're managing their own data, managing their own portals, and they do make a number of their responses open, in terms of like open data, like disaster response in satellite imagery, open and available. We're working with them to be able to then connect those systems together, make that available through OEM, so you have multiple entry points of the same data. But really, I think the big focus has been enabling drone providers and pilots to be able to quickly get their imagery into the hands of humanitarians or their local community, to be able to then do that mapping.
Awesome. We had another question from Psycat as well, which is, can we upload direct output orthophoto from WebODM?
Yes. So I'm not super familiar with what is the endpoint of WebODM, like where it is. And I don't know if anyone from WebODM is on the call. But if it's producing some, a GeoTIFF or some type of raster image file, then that output could be then integrated into OAM, for sure.
How about anyone else? I can't see any more questions at the moment, so keep them coming. I have a question around the development roadmap. You said there was like more that you were going to do in terms of toggling and being able to filter stuff.
Right.
Is that like defined yet, and can people contribute to it? What's the plan?
Yes, so that's not fully defined. We're actually going to be rolling out a user survey here soon for people who either have used or want to or are interested in using OAM, and that would be a place where we can get some good feedback. But then, as well as if you have ideas, I'll show you the repo. You can dump them into the OpenAerialMap repo, and that would be great. So we're happy to accept any ideas, and so if you're familiar with GitHub, you can go to the OpenAerialMap repository, click on the issues, and submit a new issue, and then we can kind of scheme on that. I talk more about like what good filtering would be included or would meet your needs, and we can go from there.
Yeah, I think as with all hot tools, people's feedback and ideas on how to develop them is always really useful.
Exactly. Yep.
Perfect. And then another question actually, which is obviously you showed the kind of processes to do uploads and stuff, but there was also some documentation, I think, on like guidelines for budding drone pilots and people who potentially don't have that much experience but might have access to equipment that could mean they could upload something useful into OpenAerialMap. Where do people find that?
So you can't find it yet because it's in progress. We are literally writing this, in Google Docs at the moment, and I think it's making its way around to a few kind of experts and some stakeholders on the project, and they're giving some input, and so expect to see that in the next month or two. And we'll make that available both on OpenAerialMap.org, so it's quickly accessible, as well as if you're part of the HOT or OAM mailing list, we'll be circulating that to make sure everyone has access to that.
Awesome. Cool. Are there any more questions from anybody if they want to type them in or come off mute and say them down?
Yeah, and I'm happy to follow up directly with anyone if anyone just wants to ask more questions, dive in more detail. Yeah, so I'm definitely, both myself and Tom are available to do that.
Okay, we've got another one from Alessandro on how do you view cloning OAM from GitHub to create a cloud imagery repository for internal use?
So how do you view cloning OAM from GitHub to view cloud imagery repository for internal use? I'm not sure if I totally understand the question, Alessandro, but I'm assuming that Are you talking about running your own OAM? So being able to use it internally or just locally, and is that correct? Okay. Yeah. So I think that's this is part of the reason we do open source, is that if you do want to run this openly, or internally or offline, that's great. We're actually working with a technical body in the Pacific Islands that called the Secretariat for the Pacific Community. Their Geosciences division are going to be running their own OEM. But what's interesting is that the way that we've structured infrastructure is that you can run your own internal OAM. You can also connect and get updates from the global body. You can contribute those to the global body, and so there's ways to both run an offline or internal one, as well as to contribute to the commons. So, and everything is openly licensed.
And then there was a follow-on question saying if there was any temporary issues with licensing.
No, I don't know. So I think everything is pretty openly licensed. So the imagery within OAM is at the moment is CC BY, and then all of our code is, I think, mostly BSD licensed, so it's open and available, and to use it both commercially and non-commercially.
Cool.
I guess the last thing I'll say is, sorry to cut you off, is so it's anyone, is thinking about it, has already contributed or wants to. We also would love to hear, I would love to hear, a community would love to hear about, just how you're using that imagery, how you're using OEM, what works, what doesn't work. And, and if you have a story about what it was helpful, I'm happy to work with you to help highlight and share about it. And so get in touch, and because we'd love to hear about that.
Perfect. So in that case, I guess we're probably we're getting to time. So thanks very much, Nate, for your presentation. It was great to see the whole system and hear everyone's questions. So then this is a monthly webinar program that we're doing, and the next one is going to be mid-July. And we're going to be doing actually a kind of JOSM training session. So often it's can be hard for people to learn JOSM mapping unless they're at a mapathon having a walkthrough. So we thought we'd kind of try and make that something that was available for people internationally. Obviously, a lot of people on this call might be very familiar with JOSM already, but it will be kind of an attempt to get some ID editor or beginner mappers kind of more involved in detail mapping. So we'll share the details of that, and it would be great to see some of you there as well.
Awesome.
Perfect. Okay, thanks very much then, guys.
Thanks, everyone.